The grit of the sidewalk crunches under your shoes as you walk up the driveway to your newly renovated home and as you lean against the new Chevy Suburban in your driveway. That's when you realize that listening to VTR in Sports changed your life. Your business messages, visually written, resonated with our audience and brought you new relationships and clients. That's the power from partnering with VTR in Sports. Access that power, then enjoy the fruits of our labor. Start now. Email info@virginiatalkradionetwork.com.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
So normally when Ron Sanchez, the Virginia Cavalier men's basketball coach, has spoken, including after the loss to Virginia Tech this past weekend, normally he speaks and my reaction is, I wouldn't say it's skepticism. It's more the reaction of, I don't know exactly what you're going to get from this Virginia team. To his ever-loving credit, they're fighting for him. He's playing hard. Things are going well. At least the last 3 games. This team has fought hard. They've performed in 2 of those games. Now, granted, the Miami game is against a bad team. But they hung tough after being down by 13 against Virginia Tech. And then, guess what? They went on the road and clobbered Pitt. Phenomenal victory for Virginia. So, look, I got to get my usher on here in the fast lane. And I got to admit, Ron Sanchez, some of his comments lead you to still wonder whether he's the right guy for this job long term. But if there's one thing you can say about him that you can't always say about it on the coaches, they're at least fighting.
I keep encouraging the guys that basketball is a game of possessions. If we can attack this thing, just one possession at a time, just one at a time, and move on quickly. Had made a great play, move on. You made a bad play, move on quickly. Because we're going to have about 150, 60 possessions, and you can't get hung up on one. But yet, every single possession, it's its own game. And the goal is to win more possessions than the opponent. And that's the lesson for these young guys. I'm trying to instill in them, that every possession, it's its own battle. Being fatigued is not a reason to stop. That possession could win or lose you the game.
Yeah, Virginia, what they showed against Pitt last night, it backs up that comment. Look, again, I fully was the one who was rolling my eyes. Not literally, but figuratively. Hopefully I hit it pretty well in the press conference after Virginia's loss to Virginia Tech Saturday night at John Paul Jones Arena. But Ron Sanchez has gotten that team to at least fight. There is a major limitation on the ceiling for this team. I mean, you got some unathletic guards. Day-Day Ohms is pretty athletic, but Andrew Odie, I think he's a miss in evaluation, but at least he's playing hard. You're getting something there. I don't think Tane Murray's been spectacular for Virginia. They may be going after high character guys and all that, but the lack of diverting resources has been a big thing. And again, that's a bigger picture topic, whether maybe they're in the same boat that Alabama and Georgia were in at Virginia, where you had such a successful coach and things went so well, and he really did a good job that you didn't really reshape the way you operated. And now you're having to pivot and adjust if you're Virginia. But to Ron Sanchez's credit, the team fought. They dominated Pitt last night. It's not like this was a 2-possession game. This was a game where Virginia wins by double figures. They're leading the majority of the game by double figures. They get to the coveted 73. Pitt finishes with 57. But Virginia went on a 17-0 run in the first half. That's the first time Virginia has gone on a run of that length since over a year ago, January 20th, 2024 against Georgia Tech, which, by the way, Tony Bennett was coaching that team. I know it's kind of a shock that Virginia could even go on that type of a run last year, given how anemic their offense was, particularly down the stretch. But a 34-19 lead at half. Virginia had an early lead. They held on. Jury is majorly still out about what it means long-term for Ryan Sanchez. In no way, shape, or form am I going to sit there and go, oh, now I believe he's the guy. But we mentioned the fight earlier for this team. But the idea of winning every single possession for at least a night last night, it looked like it made sense.
In the end, you take the combination of all those possessions, and if you win most of them, then you will have a chance to win. That's what we're trying to do. And this team is about 10 possessions away from being in a completely different space. Maybe 5 on offense, 5 on defense, 7 on offense, 3 on defense. You do the math. It's UVA. But I think that's how close they are, but it's also how far they are. So that's the lesson here for us.
The lesson here for us, again, an Usher moment here in the fast lane, where I'm sitting there in the press conference, and the bite we just played from Ron Sanchez, Virginia men's basketball coach, was after the game against Virginia Tech, which is why I rolled my eyes, proverbially speaking, not literally as I just did for those that are watching at Fast Lane, Ed Lane, and VTR in Sports on YouTube and Facebook Live. By the way, you'll see a new face there. Our intern, Philip, more on him in just a moment. But for Virginia, this was a really good victory last night. And I know we've said it before, but I'll be the first to admit, I was very surprised for Virginia. This is the same guy that was snarky in our InsaneRadioDeals.com fast take after the game against Virginia Tech, that the Hokies upset Virginia. They were 4-point underdogs Saturday. And I'm sitting there going, how in the world is Virginia a favorite? And yes, the books may have been a little bit premature. But Pitt's a team that, let's also keep it real here. The Hoos are still below 500 at 11-12. They're 4-8 in the ACC. If Pitt loses to Virginia, they go from being a team that's, kind of your first 4, next 4 out. And I know it's early to be looking at brackets, to a team that just flat out is outside the NCAA tournament discussion. Right now, if you're the ACC, I think you legitimately have 3 teams that are NCAA tournament worthy. Duke's the obvious. Louisville is the other obvious. Clemson is the other obvious. You've got a 4th, Trey. Why?
Oh, no. I was going to say, according to Lenardi, they are still somehow the last 4 buys and Carolina's last 4 in. Someone didn't listen. Yeah, someone didn't listen to the morning warm-up this morning.
I have not, because it just got posted and I was busy this morning.
I was. To be fair, it's been a busy day at the Virginia Talk Radio Network for you and myself.
It has. I've been out on the streets for most of the day. Trey's been around here.
Hence why we have to find free labor like Philip here.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, and by the way, we'll introduce Philip momentarily here in the fast lane. By the way, the funny thing about that comment is, when we have 5 stations at the Virginia Talk Radio Network. So when anything happens to any of them,
we have to play zone defense. Very thin zone defense here at the Virginia Talk Radio Network.
We are doing an admirable job. I'm lumping myself in, but in particular our staff here. But yes, it's zone defense. So, we have to be very resourceful here at the Virginia Talk Radio Network. Great product, great offerings, but we are a very, some companies have gotten bloated over the years. I think it's less so now with the pandemic and, obviously the 2008 recession that took place. I think gone are those type of days. But some companies still have more of a staff. We're lean and mean here in the fast lane. You could argue I fit both of those descriptions. Very lean physically. Some people would say I'm mean as well. Yay, it is what it is. But back to Virginia. Good for them last night. Good for them finding a way to get a win. They've showed some passion lately. And Ron Sanchez, again, I am not one who believes that he definitively shouldn't be the guy. They're at least fighting. You can make a case to sell me on it. Honestly, I think a reset would be bigger. There are more things at work there about whether Ron Sanchez believes it or is just trying to carry out a vision to keep it all together this year, and then he wants to do something different. If you want to keep him around, though, you have got to give Ron Sanchez, proverbially speaking,
lots of power
in the NIL marketplace by making sure he doesn't have to go the old Young Jeezy route and just playing a bad hand. If you want long-term stability at this position and you think Ron Sanchez is the guy, I think you've gotten some evidence that maybe there's something good there the last 3 games with Virginia. They're not quitting. They play Miami and beat them. Clearly, the Hurricanes are. They're one of the few teams in Power Conference basketball. I think the only team in Power Conference basketball, but one of the few that's just winless in conference play across the board. Honestly, I don't even know where that changes. I genuinely think Miami, they've checked out. Virginia, they're fighting. And the coach, to his ever-loving credit, Ron Sanchez, has at least set the tone. Again, this is from the Virginia Tech game, but he got an early technical foul in that game. And it kind of set the tone, which is, talent-wise, they are severely undermatched. We have dissected ad nauseum that one projected point guard transferred out. He's signed with Gonzaga, but redshirting. The other is effectively redshirting, hanging around the program. Why, I don't know, but medically clear, but not playing anyway in Christian Bliss. Yes, can you tell? I don't really like that decision. Don't really understand why you would allow that to happen unless, hey, Ron Sanchez gets the job next year full time. There's more money for Christian Bliss and all the other players, and you think he can actually contribute. And again, this is more of a pro model than ever before. So, hey, the accountability part gets sacrificed more than it used to back in the day. But Ron Sanchez got the early technical against Virginia Tech and elaborated on that in great detail. And maybe in hindsight, it makes sense.
I think we had close to a shot clock violation. I don't know, I have a hard time with refs calling fouls within the first minute of the game. You know, they impact the rotations of your team, especially when it's not a play that impacts a score or a possession. You know, I do believe that refs got to have a decent feel for that. You know, if he was going to go score and we fouled them at the rim, I go back to the Louisville game. We got to steal the first possession. Chucky Hepburn chases down Day. They don't call the foul. I understood why, because the fans in that building went to see Chucky play. I get that, you know. So if that's a judgment call, then I'll live with it, you know. But to have calls made at the 19-minute mark in the game when it doesn't impact the play, I had a hard time with that one.
Ron Sanchez, look, I'm cool with the passion. It's not over the top emotion that we've seen. But again, last night is the example of how Ron Sanchez, as much as we can kind of roll his eyes at some of the comments, and we have in the fast lane, he's putting himself in a spot where you go, oh, yes, this is exactly what you want to see if you're the Virginia Cavaliers. Oh, yes, we might have something here. Now, I think the jury's still out. They're still below 500 in ACC play. They need to show continued progress, if you will, over the remainder of the season. And the schedule will get more challenging, clearly. But, at Duke later this year, they're going to lose that game. Let's just keep it real here in the fast lane. I know, breaking news. Louisville, they've already played them twice. I think that's the second best team in the ACC. They still have to battle Clemson. Don't care where the game is. Clemson, very well coached. I'll certainly give them the coaching edge, but they also have got the edge in terms of better talent. Virginia Tech, I give the Hokies the coaching edge. North Carolina, more talent than Virginia, but maybe it's a gettable game in Chapel Hill in a couple of weeks just because that Carolina team has been inconsistent. And heck, they needed overtime to beat Boston College, a week and a half ago. And that's a Boston College team, or 2 weeks ago, somewhere in that ballpark, a couple of weeks ago. And that's a Boston College team that Virginia throttled. Yes, UVA a couple of weeks ago. So they're a gettable team. The rest of these are underdog, but not necessarily overcomable for Virginia. Clemson, Duke, underdogs. At Virginia Tech, I'll say they're an underdog, but not insurmountable. The rest of it in the ACC, the conference they are what they are. Maybe Wake Forest if they're hitting, but again, if Wake Forest is not hitting, we've seen the Deacons lay up an egg. And by the way, why Joe Lunardi doesn't have Wake Forest in his bracket, but he does have, or does he have Wake Forest in his bracket? Trey, come here. You're the one who discussed on the morning warm-up.
They're the next four out.
Oh, so Wake is behind North Carolina and Pitt. I need some serious clarification on that in and of itself. So we do here in the fast lane, but I do just as
granted, this could have been, he hadn't updated it as of 10:30 a.m. So this was before the morning. This was after the morning warm-up. Pitt is now at the last four in. Wake is, so he didn't update it before the morning warm-up. So last four in was Pitt, is now Pitt. Next four out are both Wake and North Carolina.
Gotcha. Okay.
And SMU.
I could get SMU as well. And by the way, Virginia, they played SMU a couple of times. Some of this is going to be Virginia, how they're judged against better teams. Some of this is also Virginia, just where they are right now, legitimately as a program. And that, hey, you want to see them at least beat teams they're capable of beating and fight well against teams they can fight well against. If they get destroyed by Duke, whatever. I don't hold that against them. There is such a talent gap. Maybe Sanchez is a marginally better coach than John Shire, but Shire's got experience too, and clearly he's got it going at Duke. I trust what Louisville's done. They swept Virginia. Brownell and Clemson, like I said earlier, I trust that. Don't know if I necessarily believe a ton in the coaching of Forbes at Wake Forest, although I kind of throw last year out given the situation with Steve Forbes' wife and the sickness in which she endured, which is very, very sad, but he's been there by her side, which is awesome. However, that's the truth of where Virginia happens to be right now. Now, there are a lot of things that Ron Sanchez has said and done that I still think maybe he's not the guy for Virginia long-term, but I can at least sell you on the idea that there is some hope for this team the remainder of the season. Meanwhile, we will pivot away from the Virginia Cavaliers momentarily and talk Liberty basketball with BG, Bryson Gordon of newsadvance.com in about 10 minutes, 5:30 today in the Fast Lane. But there are other topics to discuss momentarily. However, reliability, uncertainty, those are not things that go hand in hand. You don't want uncertainty. You need reliability. And if you're in an auto accident, you need reliability from a team that's been working with our community for over 4 decades. TrostLaw.com. 777-HURT, the easy number to remember. 777, your lucky number, because when you call 777-HURT 24 hours a day, you will speak with a person. And if you don't speak with the right person to handle your special area of the case, the person with whom you speak, not the robot, but the person, will get you connected with that person within 24 hours, real time, by the way. So that includes weekends. You call on a Sunday or a Saturday afternoon and something happens, you'll hear by Sunday afternoon, 24 hours. That's the difference with Trost Law, the type of personal service you deserve from a law firm that knows how to fight for you as they've done since 1982. Meanwhile, speaking of needing lawyers, well, we'll get to that right now in the Fast Five at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kind of ish. Let's start with number 5.
Well, we didn't exactly specify what kind of lawyers, and that's because there may be people that need legal consultation after David Purdom of ESPN has reported that there is another gambling ring investigation. We know about the one with Virginia Tech commit who never played for them, Hyzier Miller, who is no longer on the team. Investigation according to issues that popped up last year when Miller was at Temple. We also know about the one that popped up with Terry Rozier, the former Hargrave Military Academy Tiger, who has been in the NBA for a while after a stop in Sodom and Gomorrah, the Rick Pitino, Bobby Petrino era at Louisville. Now there's another one that's popped up. A gambling ring is currently under federal investigation for its role in 2 NBA betting cases and also was involved in unusual wagering activity on at least 3 men's college basketball games this season, according to sources who have told that to David Purdom of ESPN. The ring under investigation, there's more to this, by the way, in the NBA betting cases has links to college basketball and specifically games featuring, this is where it gets interesting on a local level, Eastern Michigan, not so much, but Mississippi Valley State and North Carolina A&T, absolutely. Both of whom played at Liberty University, and Mississippi Valley State, not really much of a fight. A&T, a little bit more of one. Hey, I first of all, I'll just say this much. Having covered those games for Liberty and been there, I don't think it really mattered whether people were checking themselves in and out of the game as to what was going to happen in the said matchup between Mississippi Valley State and Liberty and North Carolina A&T and Liberty. The Flames were clearly superior to either of those teams. And here's the other part to Liberty in particular. The time that they played A&T, the Aggies actually fought pretty hard. So this was not we're going to just completely be checked out the entire time. Mississippi Valley State, on the other end, that's the one where Liberty got into it with Mississippi Valley State's bench toward the back half of that game. But the Flames, generally speaking, when they're up big on teams, they are unlikely to cover or be conscientious of that because they will take the air out of the basketball. Very much so. It is a Richie McKay staple in those areas. So, okay, shady activity involving 2 of the 3 opponents of Liberty this year. Doesn't mean Liberty's involved directly. Just means, hey, they may have been the opponent of something where someone else is involved in shady activity. Can't really do anything about that. But what you can also say is Liberty has a style of play that when they get a big lead, they're less likely to run it up. So there's an opportunity, just generally speaking, no matter who Liberty's playing, for the Flames to not cover, because Richie McKay and company really don't care about that. They care about winning the basketball game, and therefore that's something that you're going to do to avoid going down that particular road. Speaking of college athletics, by the way,
Number 4.
college student athletes in Colorado could soon be paid directly by their schools as opposed to collectives as part of an NIL legislature bill that would build on their ability to profit from their name, image, and likeness. So in addition to NIL, it would be more directed by the schools. It builds off an existing Colorado law allowing NIL payments themselves, but that this law would allow schools to be in charge of it. Everybody's waiting for the House versus NCAA settlement ultimately that transpires, but I love the theory behind this law. It bypasses these third-party organizations, collections of boosters, and NIL organizations. Okay, I get it. You can have minimum amounts of payment from the House settlement and the revenue sharing models that are coming to college athletics. Again, that part doesn't bother me. And you're going to have places in the world, the SEC, where they might try to add on to that with certain type of endorsement deals. I don't pretend to be an accounting expert. If you are, fastlaneedlane@gmail.com or fastlaneedlane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we would love to utilize your expertise on how to properly quantify fair market value for athletes and the potential IRS ramifications or State Department of Taxation ramifications. Because some of these guys are getting paid a lot more than what their market value for an endorsement would actually be. I don't know how that's going to end up going. Don't pretend to. But, you're going to find ways around this. But the most logical scenario is for students to just be paid directly by their schools rather than, it'd be like here at the Virginia Talk Radio Network, if we had a third party that was in charge of our pay structure and payroll, and then they had to go through management, it would make absolutely no sense.
Number 3.
Speaking of college football, by the way, Nebraska, they have decided to cancel their spring football game. Matt Rule, the coach, said it's to prevent other schools from gathering film on their players and trying to poach them. In the paranoid world of coaching, I wonder whether this will become a trend. I also can see a scenario where you may see the upside of a player, particularly one who didn't play a lot the prior year, and be intrigued by that player. But is that really going to be the difference between that player going to a school or not? I get it. If you are a college football athlete and you've never put anything on film, you may perform in the spring game. But I've heard this happens. I will laugh my butt off if you took it seriously. But a player wanting a raise based on something they do in the spring football game is not viable enough for me to add on to your NIL value, especially if you've proven absolutely nothing in prior years, which is where we get to introduce our newest intern and producer, Philip Doss. He played for Liberty University. He can correct me on this or say that once upon a time, maybe in a spring football game, he tried to embellish his NIL value.
I can't say I really had the opportunity to do that, saying I didn't really have any game tape, but I can tell you I went out on the field and tried to show them why maybe they should put me on the field, but never really got the chance of that.
Hey, it happens to everyone. We can get to that at another time in the fast lane, but it is an opportunity for us to introduce Philip, who is correct? You just wrapped up playing football at Liberty.
Yes.
And you also are interested in sales and sports marketing, correct?
The dream.
Yes. Being able to talk sports for a living.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've come to the right place, according to some, depending on what you really want.
Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Yes, we will indeed. In the meantime, we are on to
Number 2.
Speaking of football going bad, we are now up to 9 massage therapists. 3 more have added their name to the list of those who have accused Baltimore Ravens kicker Justin Tucker of taking inappropriate liberties with their services. This is unfolding just like the Deshaun Watson situation. Like at first it was 3, then it was 6, then it was 13, then I stopped counting. Now we have Justin Tucker. At first it was a couple, then it was 6, now we're up to 9. I have stopped counting. If it's one person, not to say it's not serious, but maybe there's just miscommunication. But when you get that many people who are all accusing you of the same thing, this is a serial pattern of behavior. And 2 things. Justin Tucker had a down year for the Ravens. This is an easy opportunity for the Ravens to cut bait and get out of the contract of an underperforming, highly paid player. and not exactly have to worry about, oh, you cut him and you left on bad terms with one of your franchise icons. It's a business. It's cold. There's a very real opportunity to this. Here's the other thing that this never ceases to amaze me with athletes. Why do you need to engage in this particular level of behavior? When if you are such a baller, especially an NFL player with lots and lots of
dollar bills, y'all,
and potentially really good looks, then why do you need to go this route to satisfy your pleasures when you should be able to have much more easy access to the best looking people in the world, many of whom have no standards about their personal conduct? I mean, Philip, you played football. Am I right or am I wrong with this?
Well, you're right. Like, you would think being at that level with that amount of money, like, you have the fame, like you got to go this route. Like, I think Justin Tucker was not the name we thought we'd be hearing this winter when it came to another massage therapist.
Yeah, it's not exactly the one, but when you start adding 9 and you're pushing double figures, you start losing the benefit of the doubt.
Number 1.
We brought this up yesterday in the fast lane. Myles Garrett, the Cleveland Browns defensive end who has demanded a trade. There are a number of suitors that are potentially out there. I think Trey brought this up. The LA Rams is a possibility. I think he mentioned it on the morning warm-up with Ty Tracy. You can check out the morning warm-up wherever you listen to podcasts because, of course,
and guess what? We keep receipts.
Right there. Here's another one. If you are a team with a rookie contract quarterback that's very talented and you know he can perform at a really, really high level and you have the financial flexibility the next couple of years to go all in, why don't you raise your and fork over the picks and the money to Myles Garrett if you're the Washington Commanders? Not saying it'll happen, but that was the screaming red light team to me. You can't pay Deshaun Watson or you can't pay Jaden Daniels. Quite the different in terms of character than Deshaun Watson. You cannot pay Jaden Daniels a big contract for another couple of years. So you can use the financial flexibility to add a lot of really good players around him before you have to get more creative with your cap in a couple of years. Meanwhile, when we return in the fast lane, we have gotten creative on our high school football, basketball, and winter sports coverage because we've got perspective on that. But there's a twist. Find out when we return here in the fast lane, or check us out for a sneak peek at Fastlane Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Everyone's personal credit history and background. Everybody's in a different spot. At Feller Chevrolet, they understand that. It's why Greg Walker spoke with us and shared how Feller Chevrolet can work with you.
Well, we have multiple lenders, so everybody's different in personality and in their credit equity of what they put into a vehicle. So the different lenders have different areas that they like to go after, and we know which ones to use for the different individuals to get them the best payments possible, terms that they need. As far as interest rates, everybody is saying, oh my goodness, they're getting so high. But if you look historically, we're really right in a rate area that traditionally for housing and cars is very competitive. We've just been so spoiled.
At Feller Chevrolet, they work with people from diverse credit backgrounds to get the right car for their needs. Stop by and see them. Main Street in Alta Vista, and visit fellersdirect.com.
Welcome to the Villas at Oakwood. Our stunning community offers spacious, modern villas with top-of-the-line amenities. Enjoy views of the Peaks of Otter from your patio home. Connect with neighbors at our exclusive clubhouse. Discover your dream home today. Experience the maintenance-free lifestyle you deserve. Visit us just behind Bedford Memorial Hospital. Online at oakwoodvillas.com. Or just contact Robin Lee Sage, 434-238-4477.
When shopping for auto liability insurance, it's wise to consider the best policy, not the cheapest. Hi, I'm Randy Trost with Trost Law. It's crucial to have more than the minimum insurance on your auto liability policy. This protects you if you injure someone or if someone without proper insurance hurts you. Having the right policy ensures you have sufficient underinsured coverage to take care of you and your family. To learn more how we can help you navigate these challenges, visit us at trostlaw.com. That's trostlaw.com.
We're here with Colt from We Fix Stupid Computers. Colt, to go along with your residential or individual walk-in services that you offer, You also do a lot of business IT support. How about you discuss that, and what specifically do you do to help businesses in the area?
We see a lot of that. Small to medium-sized businesses, they still have their IT projects. They still need resources to help them within their office and for remote users. And so we'll step in and fill in the gap where we do a lot of projects for them, help them manage their resources, their budgets, and get their technology under control.
Colt, how can these people reach out to you to assess their IT needs?
Call us. Our number is 434-525-8590. Our website, wefixstupidcomputers.com. We're on Facebook, and our office is here locally, 14690 Forest Road, right next to Scott's Cabinet on 221.
Hi, I'm Zach Mackey, the voice of Virginia Tech men's basketball. Catch the Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle weekdays 5 to 6 p.m. on VTRN Sports 93.3 FM and the VTRN Sports app.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
We're going to go in reverse order here as we are back in the Fast Lane. Normally, we would talk high school sports and maybe save room for something else. But because our next guest does cover high school sports for newsadvance.com, but he also covers the Liberty Flames, Bryson Gordon pinch hitting for his colleague Ben Cates of newsadvance.com. Bryson, good to be speaking with you for the second time today. We were a little bit late today, but as you know from seeing me over in our spot over, well, at Liberty Arena, or Bel Air as we call it, it's been one of those days where things seem to be operating a little slower than expected. So we appreciate your pinch hitting and joining us today in the Fast Lane. And can you confirm that Ben Cates is legitimately sick and under the weather?
Yeah, Ben Cates, sports editor, he's definitely under the weather. So if he's listening, I don't know if he is or not, but if he's got the energy to even listen, I hope he's doing well. But I guess we'll see how my pinch hitting ability is. We'll see what my percentage is at the end of the night. I figured you were late today because you were getting in a nice run with how beautiful it is outside.
It is beautiful, Bryson, but the most part, I try to do it first thing in the morning to make sure I knock it out of the way before, everything else pops up. So anyway, the Liberty Flames, talking basketball with them. Richie McKay met with the media. They went on the 2-1 road trip. Big picture, if you said Liberty's going to go on the road and go 2-1 against FIU, an expected win, Kennesaw closer to a toss-up, and then Jacksonville State, which turned out to be the loss, would you take it, or would you have reservations given that some of the issues that have plagued the Flames kind of crept up again against Jacksonville State?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it definitely caught up to him there in the second half. I think you could probably credit it to a pretty good offensive half from Jacksonville State. You could probably credit it to maybe just a little bit of a poor defensive half for Liberty, and then maybe the rebounding got to him also. But overall, you kind of have to take what you get on the road trip. 2-1, you mentioned those 3 games. You probably feel comfortable about beating FIU going into it. So you want to say you have 1 win under your belt, even though they're not guaranteed in conference play. But 2-1 is probably a good feeling. You'd like to have 1 more where you could be in a tie for second rather than in this. I don't even know what to call it in third place. There's a handful of teams there at 5 and 4. You probably feel comfortable having a whole game up on that group right now. So I would assume that they would prefer to have 3-0 definitely over 2-1 right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Liberty, you'd love to have that. I know Richie McKay has spoken so often about it. This just being a tune-up towards the postseason and wanting to get to that particular point. Did Jacksonville State, though, hit on an area of concern for the Flames, which is the size has its pluses and minuses at guards, but the physicality that Jacksonville State showed attacking the rim and getting to the rim, or is that a one-game blip the Flames you believe can easily correct?
I don't think it's something they can easily correct. Obviously, the roster is what it is. And I think the concerning part about it is not just Jacksonville State did this, but you look at Kennesaw State, they kind of did the same thing where late in the second half, or at least the majority of the second half, they really started playing downhill and playing aggressively on Liberty's guards, Caden Matheny and Colin Porter. I think the concerning thing is if you're Liberty is that you've been through conference play one time now and you've seen teams make that adjustment at halftime, which makes you think they're probably going to make that adjustment over the full length of the game in the second round of games whenever you see them in conference play. So that's something they're going to have to be concerned about. And you don't want to have to rely on, the back line of Owen Aquino and Zach Cleveland to bail you out at the rim, because that's going to ultimately get them in foul trouble also. And then you're looking at a bench of really one forward coming off the bench for them right now. So I'm sure that's definitely a concern. And unfortunately, it's not something they could really address right now. Nobody's going to come in and become, I don't think these guys are going to hit growth spurts overnight, basically. And so, but Richie McKay said it, we do harp on it a lot when they lose, and we don't really give them enough credit when they win. And the wins this year, especially against Kennesaw, for the lack of size they had against Kennesaw's really physical guards, Caden and Colin really held their own, and they looked really good. So, I guess it just kind of comes down to, whether they win or lose, like Richie McKay said.
Well, you mentioned that other element, but do people often overlook for the Liberty guards, as we're chatting about Flames basketball with Bryson Gordon from newsadvance.com here in the Fast Lane? Do people overlook the fact that one of the assets is those guys are actually pretty tenacious and tough defenders, and they may give up a little bit in size, but they seem to be thicker than they were in past years, and therefore more able to handle the load, at least getting to the rim where they can pass it off to not the tallest post players in the world, but taller, relatively speaking.
Yeah, I think, looking back on last week, whenever they played Kennesaw, I was going back and watching some of that conference championship game from Colin Porter's freshman season. He looks like a different guy. He's a lot more physical now. People remember him, and for that time, he looked kind of small on the court. He looks, short on the court, obviously, but he's not slight of frame. Right? He's a really strong point guard, and it's difficult when you have a guard like him and Caden Matheny a little bit, that play underneath these really tall guards that are 6'3" and 6'4" that Kennesaw had and the Jacksonville State had. Whenever you have guards like that play underneath you, it's kind of annoying. And I know it at least at first it's kind of hard to get downhill on those kind of guards because they can beat you to the spot, and maybe if the refs aren't calling it, the guards can play a physical game. So it's definitely something that gets overlooked in some aspects, but in instances against Jacksonville State, at least, they were really getting downhill on Matheny there late, and they were using kind of a little bit of a back to the basket game at some point, backing him down and playing physical with him. So we'll see what the other teams do down the stretch. There are a handful of teams who have guards that are that big. Right? We mentioned Kennesaw has them. Louisiana Tech has Newman, who's a big guard. And so these teams that have seen Liberty once, I'm sure they're going to reach into that bag of tricks and try to play a little bit of bully ball against them.
Bryson Gordon with us in the Fast Lane at Bryson Gordon on Twitter. It's easy to keep up with him there, and Instagram. And newsadvance.com as BG is hanging out today with us in the Fast Lane. BG, the road ahead for the Liberty Flames, is the bigger guard part the concern, or do you believe more the size of bigger post players? And let's start with Thursday's matchup against Louisiana Tech and Daniel Baccio, who's been a menace to many teams in Conference USA. Is that the bigger concern given the combination of limited size in the post for Liberty and limited, better, but still limited developing depth?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the major concern for Thursday. And I think Thursday may be the outlier overall in Conference USA play, because you do look at Louisiana Tech and they have Baccio, who is, if he's not the conference player of the year, he's certainly 1B in that conversation with Pierre from Jacksonville State. And so, he's probably the biggest exception to the rule that the rest of these teams in Conference USA really do thrive through some really good guards. And so you got to focus on that against Louisiana Tech. But looking down the road, I would imagine, getting as much as you can from a guy like Taylon Peter, who is 6'3" and plays a completely different role from, Colin Porter and Caden Matheny for all intents and purposes. I think you're getting a guy like him to really become the focal point of where you want to go offensively. They look really great when he's hitting. When he's hitting threes and he's, really playing athletically, that's when they kind of look like the best offensive version of themselves. But Richie McKay mentioned the pullbacks that you have whenever he's out there with obviously Colin and Caden at guard as well, because you look really small, and then you got a lot of guys really trying to defend bigger guys. And so I think the guard situation is going to be the longer term issue with this team this season. But in the immediate, yes, it's obviously concerning that Baccio is coming to town. But I think, Cleveland and Aquino show that whenever they're not in foul trouble, they can do a decent enough job of at least providing a little bit of resistance with some big guys. And so you hope they can maybe hold them to, a below average night like they've held some of these other scorers in Conference USA in the last week.
BG, we mentioned the Liberty Flames and where they are. What's your assessment of I don't want to call it manufactured depth, but the Flames have had to get creative with Isaiah Enan's injury. Josh Smith was never going to be available this season. Richie McKay said he's making progress today, but he's not going to play this year. So that rules that out. How do you assess the way the Flames have gone about creating some depth with Gabriel McKay and Xander Yates and the ability to try to get that bench up to 7, 8, 9 guys.
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned it, right? He has 6 starters. And so with the 6 that he rolls out there for more than 25 minutes apiece, pretty much, when you think about the 5 starters and then Taylor Peter, he only has to go 2 other guys to have an 8-man rotation. So he's really worked in Gabriel McKay and Xander Yates. And I looked at the minutes earlier today working on a story that's going to be up later this week, just a plug. But I was looking at some minutes for those guys, and it's the increase that they've had from the early parts of the conference play season. The increase in minutes that they've had has been steady to this point. So you can really factor them in as rotation guys. The unfortunate part is for a guy like Yates is, he maybe doesn't fit exactly what you want him to be. If he's coming in for a guy like Owen Aquino, maybe you want a guy who can protect the rim a little bit better, maybe play a little bit more inside. He's obviously a guy who likes to shoot the 3-pointers and is usually getting targeted by some of these other big guys in Conference USA on the defensive end. They'll throw it in the paint to try to get a post up on him. And so, I think whenever you look at the bench, maybe you can steal 8 minutes a game, right, with each of those guys, and that gives the guys a rest. And it's really going to become important in the conference tournament, right? Whenever they're going to be playing possibly 3 games in 3 days, a situation like that, if they want to go win it all, those 6 guys are going to get really tired really fast if Gabriel McKay and Xander Yates aren't giving them quality minutes off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing for the Flames is to that. And is it more, Bryson, about just getting to that point where when you get to the conference tournament, you may be more selective with your bench and how you use it, but if you can get production out of the bench right now, it can alleviate some of the wear and tear on the rest of the Flames up to that point, and therefore keep your core of 6, maybe 7 guys more fresh for that marathon of 3 games in a week's time down in Huntsville.
Yes, it would be huge. And not only that, right? We've watched this team play a lot of conference games now. They're halfway through conference play. How many times have they been up at halftime? We feel like it's been pretty much every single game you look up. If they've been able to turn some of those games into maybe 15-point wins and they can get some of their guys out early, maybe get them 5 minutes of extra rest on that Thursday night, as opposed to, maybe having to play them 35 minutes because the game kind of lingers there in the single digits for a lot of the second half. So maybe it's just as simple as coming out and having a better start of the second half at night and springing up a better lead against some of these teams when you're at home, especially. That's something that Richie McKay mentioned is their home record hasn't been as quality as you would expect it to be. And so maybe it comes down to this upcoming weekend. Maybe they have good, strong starts for the second half and they can get some guys out if they have double-digit leads. It comes down to things like that, taking advantage of 5 minutes here or there whenever you can get it. But I think in the long haul, you just want to make sure, number one, you get to Huntsville, Alabama healthy. You want your top 6 to be healthy, because if Liberty gets there with those guys healthy and just a little bit of rest, you probably feel good enough that they have a chance to shoot lights out for 3 days and win the tournament.
Bryson, we will pivot away from the Liberty Flames and touch on basketball of a different kind. Prep basketball, because you also cover that for newsadvance.com. Here's my bird's eye view assessment of Seminole District boys basketball. Initially, it looked like it was going to be EC Glass and then other challengers. Then it looked like it was going to be LCA and other challengers. Now Heritage, they've come on strong, and even JF, and maybe getting over the monkey off their back of trying to get Coach Jeff Monroe that 300th career victory. That now all of a sudden we're getting what many people expect in Seminole District sports, which is, I wouldn't call it a logjam, but a number of teams that are vying for being the tops in the district.
Yeah, you really have a good race shaping up, and tomorrow night between Heritage and EC Glass, which is going to be the first time they play against each other. They're going to play each other twice in 9 days. Tomorrow's going to be the first one of them, so it's going to be a huge game. You look at the top of the district right now; it's obviously Glass and LCA and Heritage. And Heritage got a huge win over LCA on their home court last week, and that was something that was massive for Heritage, because now they still haven't lost in 2025. They've been rolling. I think that was their 7th straight, and they played a night at Amherst. So if they win that, looking at 8 straight going into the Glass game. The top is really starting to separate itself. You got those 3 there. You got Rustburg hanging around at 3 losses, who maybe they can, get an upset against one of these top 3 teams and really put themselves back in the picture. And then I've seen JF a couple times, and they're capable of beating obviously anybody in the league because they beat LCA, one night. So the district, I wasn't here last year. I've heard people talk about what it was like last year. It sounds this year like it's probably a little bit better, especially when you count that Heritage seems to be really finding their groove this time of year.
Yeah, they definitely have. And now we're getting to a point where it's quite a bit of fun to see this district kind of ping pong back and forth amongst teams that are projected to do well and maybe even win it. One of the interesting things, though, that came out, and it was tweeted out, we retweeted it at Fastlane Edlane from the ever vocal, but I don't think it's in a bad way, LCA boys basketball coach Matt Klein. And full disclosure here in the fast lane, as we know, I like to get my usher on. I went to high school with Matt Klein and, think the world of what he did at New Covenant. That's a tough job and know he'll do great things and is already doing good things at LCA. But he tweeted this out. How do we get shot clock management imposed? The stall tactics teams are using is getting way out of hand, asking for all coaches, or at least most. I will say this, that I have largely wondered that sentiment. Are we on to something where, we see it in football, where we see the play clock on the field of many high school football stadiums that you can't do it immediately this year. It'd be virtually impossible. But in the future, maybe that's something that the VHSL should consider for boys and girls basketball.
I'm sure that he would be happy if they did. I was actually at the game the other night that probably sparked the conversation for him whenever they played Heritage. I think Heritage had one possession in the last 155 that was separated by a couple of dead balls, a foul, and I think one ball was deflected out of bounds. But yeah, I mean, he's got a point. It really is tough to feel comfortable about the last 2 minutes of a game whenever you can do something like that. So I think it would be cool to see if it's logistically possible. Maybe that's a different conversation and how long that would take to implement. But he mentioned it. I mean, yeah, we at Glass and Heritage, at Heritage and LCA the other night. Heritage was just running their stall offense, and I talked to him after the game, and he talked about the difficulties of stopping it. He said, right, if I was in the same position, I would have done it too. He said, it's just how you want to play at the end of the game. And so it's I don't blame them. I don't blame them for doing what they had to do to win. And then I saw the next day that he said that. So I think he makes a great point. It probably would lead to some quality basketball. I think we had a phenomenal finish that night, but we maybe even had an even better one if you had the teams going back and forth for the last 2 minutes.
Great perspective from Bryson Gordon. He has sparked a discussion for us maybe later this week in the Fast Lane, although we got a lot of Super Bowl coverage coming up in a special version of the Fast Lane tomorrow. We'll tease that for you in the meantime. Bryson, good to chat with you today. Thank you for pinch hitting for your sick and we'll call him wounded, at least in the chest area, colleague Ben Cates. Good to catch up with you today, and we will see you in a couple of days at our favorite spot.
Good to catch up with you. Hope I hit a home runner here.
Yes, he did. And if he were physically in present, we would do the old Jazz and Will Smith handshake. And you know what I'm talking about if you visualized it, where they slap hands and then they do the snap of the fingers back each way, the old Will Smith and Jazz from the Fresh Prince handshake. That's what we would have done for Bryson Gordon. But he's not physically here, so we just had to do a mock version of it at Fastlane Edlane or VTR in Sports Lynchburg on YouTube and Facebook Live, wherever you can stream us live. In the meantime, when we come back in the Fast Lane, if we get a moment, NASCAR and Bowman Gray. Thought it was a good thing. More on that when we return.
We are making it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier used car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years with the best selection, value, finance options, and exceptional service. Plus 900 pre-owned vehicles all in one location. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume. The Used Car Superstore is your one stop for most makes and models. Cars, trucks, vans, SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Plus, Sheeler owns the finance company. Getting approved for credit is easy on the Motor Mile with finance options for every budget. 900 used vehicles in stock now. More than any other dealer in the area. Hurry in for straightforward pricing and more inventory arriving daily. Why wait? Make it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier family-owned car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Real soul food. You feel the warmth from the first bite to the last? That feeling comes to life at the Yard on 5th Street. Staples like fried catfish sandwich and platter, smoked wings, pulled pork, and Philly brisket sandwich, just like a cheesesteak, except with smoked briskets. Come feel the warmth in every bit of Lynchburg's best soul food. The Yard on 5th Street in downtown Lynchburg.
The Black Crows, Mount Joy, Government Mule, JJ Gray, and Mofro. Need us to continue? The California Honey Drop, Larkin Poe, Future Bird, and that's just a handful of acts performing at Floyd Fest 25, Aurora, July 23rd through 27th at Festival Park in Floyd. Get your tickets at FloydFest.com. Winner of the Best Music Festival. More acts will be announced soon for FloydFest 25 Aurora. Get your tickets now at FloydFest.com.
Imagine a community where every homeowner feels heard and valued. That's the feeling you deserve, and that's the feeling you'll get at Brownstone Properties. Our dedicated team is here to support you, ensuring clear communication and proactive solutions. Transform your homeowners associations. Call Brownstone Properties today for a free consultation. Brownstoneproperties.com and 3720 Old Forest Road in Lynchburg. Let's build a better community together.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
I only hope and pray that is not actually happening too much with certain Eagles, Jalen Carter in particular. Just, by the way, if there's one Eagle that I worry about more than anyone else down in New Orleans or at any Super Bowl gathering, it is definitively the one that got in trouble for drag racing someone else, and that person crashed, and there were a couple of fatalities that resulted from it. And he's been noted to not exactly make the best decisions. So I hope and pray that, Drew Rosenhaus seems to be down there working his magic because he's just signed maybe soon to be former, maybe actually staying with Philadelphia, defensive end Josh Sweat, a Virginia Beach native who came down to Virginia Tech. By the way, we're getting some kind of feedback going on through the microphone. There it is. It just disappeared. Nope, never mind. We're hearing Jim Rome in the Fast Lane right now. There it is. See, Philip is with us today. This happens all the time, first time. Philip, Earth to Philip. Earth to Philip. Are you here?
Sorry about that.
You know what? We're going to shelve the NASCAR discussion till later this week. I love Bowman Gray. I thought it was great. It was a phenomenal experience. We're not doing it tomorrow because we have a special version. Yes, it is. Happy hour 7:30. We have a special edition of the Fast Lane tomorrow. Tomorrow is National Girls and Women's in Sports Day. So we have you covered with college basketball talk and with the NFL Super Bowl perspective. All of that tomorrow in the Fast Lane. Stay tuned for the guests. We'll tease that with our promos and after the show. But we have a lineup of 3 phenomenal female guests to take us through tomorrow. And one of them was going to join us today, but she was gracious enough to accommodate us for the big day tomorrow. So that's on tap for tomorrow. In the meantime, yes, prayers, thoughts, please. Drew Rosenhaus, if you're down in New Orleans working on Josh Sweat, who has switched agencies to allow Rosenhaus to represent him, maybe because he wants to stay in Philly and Rosenhaus has a really good relationship, read into that what you will, with Howie Roseman, maybe, working the system to get Jalen Carter to Philadelphia after he fell from being the top pick in the draft with that Georgia debacle a couple of off seasons ago, that, maybe he wants to stay in Philly and get as much money as possible. So read into that. But yes, prayers that in addition to working Eagles clients that maybe, we're babysitting the one who probably needs it the most, but is the most crucial to the Eagles' success of the Rosenhaus clients, which is the extremely talented, but I don't know how mature he is, Jalen Carter. So, on the moment. Now, we will table some of this other talk till later in the Fast Lane. But right now, we get a chance to introduce the newest member of our intern team, Philip. Philip, you played Philip Doss as his name. True or false? Number 64 in your program and number 1 in your heart.
I want to say yes, that's true. Shining in the heart.
So your background, you're from the LBG, correct?
Oh yeah, Lynchburg, Vegas.
Now, where'd you go to high school?
LCA.
We don't hold that against anybody. Not at all. So you went to LCA and you went to Liberty.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, born and raised.
Did you want to leave?
When you're from Lynchburg, there's something in the back of everybody's mind. It's like, I want to get out. I need to get out. But sometimes the situation's too good and it's almost just like a pipeline when you're at LCA. Oh, why not go to Liberty? Oh, guess I'm going to get the opportunity to play football anyway. So it almost feels like I'm still at LCA for another 4 years.
It's really cool though, because there's that. And then, I'll say this, you mentioned that part, but Liberty we have a babysitter. She's great. She's from the Lynchburg area originally, and she's a freshman at Liberty. You call them freshmen, by the way. This isn't the whole UVA thing with like the pinky out where it's first year.
Yeah.
Okay. She's from the area too, and she lives on campus. Did you live on campus or in an apartment?
I did live on campus for a year. I'm on East Campus, yeah.
And then after that, did you go back home or you in an apartment?
I went back home for a little bit, but now I'm settled into an apartment with one of my old roommates, so it just never really ends.
Was it worth it for you though, after being at home? Like, do you have to get out of the house at some point?
Yeah, at some point, I started getting a little older. I was like, I think it's kind of tired of going into the kitchen, see my mom or my dad. So it's probably kind of nice to get my own space now.
You know, I'm sure they love you, but they probably didn't want to make it too welcoming because they wanted you to get out of there too.
Yeah, it almost makes when I reunite with them again, it's a little more special instead of just like, oh, hey, how you doing? So it all worked out.
As you age, and especially when you spouse up and kid up, if that's in your future, probably not immediately, but at some point down the road. Whenever that time comes and whenever the good Lord blesses you with those great blessings in your life, you will even appreciate your parents even more than you do now.
I bet.
Now, you're here today. You've interned with us. You've shadowed me on sales. Are you afraid of sales now that you've seen me doing it?
I want to say I'm more afraid of the talking. Probably isn't hard. It's the closing. That's probably the thing it's when he gets down in the details. That's probably the thing I'm most worried about, I guess you could say. But hey, going around and talking to people all day kind of seems fun. I don't know. I get to get on another vulnerable level with somebody. So I'm kind of excites me every time. I don't know.
See, I like that. Well, we'll get you back out on the sales street because you're seeing that side of the business. And now you're in producing here at the Fast Lane. You produced a couple of days. You shadowed it. Now you're getting your first taste running the board, as our listeners can probably tell today. Been good. We're on the air, but, we got a couple of little minor things that need to be cleaned up, which is par for the course when you're just starting out. Are you intimidated by the production side at all?
I am very intimidated. Trey, I give Trey all the props for doing this because this is something that is not for the weak.
Yeah, Trey and Ty are both really good at it. The cool thing is I'm in the same boat. I can do the production stuff, but I can leave a lot of that to Trey. And when you do the sales stuff, it's the best excuse of, hey, I'm going to go out and make the money. So that's all it is. Meanwhile, that was just an introduction to Philip. You'll be seeing more of him at Fastlane, Ed Lane, and VTR and Sports on Facebook and YouTube, and hearing more of him in the Fastlane weekdays, 5 to 6 p.m. VTR and Sports app. Ask your smart speaker, open VTR and Sports. We're back tomorrow, 5 to 6. Thanks for listening to the Fast Lane on VTR and Sports, 93.3 FM, W227BG Timberlake, and 1320 AM,